amongst good friends and learn the wonders of wine with Legacy Foundation Japan. So welcome. We are here with the owner of Rangitoto Tokyo, Wayne Shennen, and he is going to take us through a lovely tasting today. So thank you so much, Wayne, for having us here.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's have some wine.
Yeah, do it.
Something in the glass. More comfortable.
Just get started.
So what you've got, I'll explain the cheese first, and then you can have a sip. So this one here is a 1.5 year aged cheddar from TopTia in New Zealand. This one is actually from France. It's a French breed, and this one is an Italian Coleman. And this is agave syrup. So you guys all know what agave is? Marvelous. Yeah, most people are not so familiar. Ridiculously good cheese.
Oh really? Yeah, it really is good.
Okay, so we've got varying levels of wine tasting experience. So one of the first things to know is when you actually taste wine, the first taste isn't honest. So that's one of the reasons why people swirl around and spit, is because what you need to do is acclimatize your mouth, particularly to the acid. So if you have a little sip, it might taste nice, but sometimes the first sip of a wine doesn't taste good at all. But that's because your mouth isn't ready. So that's one of the reasons why people start to look like gargling and things like that. So it's actually probably, they're not just being like that. It's to acclimatize, and that's a little sip kind of wash your mouth, a little sip wash your mouth. The third sip, that's the kind of honest. And the other thing is the reason why you kind of tend to swirl is because this bottle's only just been opened. A little bit of oxygen helps to open it up, and also it'll help to warm it up if it's a little bit cold. And then you can get that aroma. 70% of your sense of flavour comes from your nose, which is why the reason why everything tastes bland and really got a lot of nose. Have a taste of what
And the best place to hold it is
for wine, right?
We're
I've seen some people hold it this way, and then other people who see that, they get furious. Why are you holding it this way? No.
But I guess that's the thing. Like, New Zealand is a pretty relaxed country for almost everything, unless we're losing rugby. It's not so relaxed. But I mean, this what I just said about acclimatizing your mouth. That's kind of pretty factual, I guess. How you hold the glass depends. I mean, I hold it like that because I've got a problem with my hands. So I have my finger underneath the glass all the time because my hands hurt. And so if the glass is too cold, which is quite common, especially for things like Chardonnay, hold it like this so it warms up a little bit.
Okay.
But honestly, just
no big deal.
Yeah.
I always thought it's for red. Like you could, it's okay. It's not a faux pas to hold red either. But white is supposed to be cold, so you're not supposed to. Good to know.
But then, and this is interesting too, because certain wines, Chardonnays, you tend to drink closer to room temperature. But even room temperature, what does that mean? Are you talking about in Australia?
Yeah.
Where maybe it's like 40 degrees today, or are you talking room temperature in Tokyo where it's not so much? So, I mean, ultimately, it's just wine should be fun. You know, and that's kind of what we want. Like, personal preference is the only thing that's important in my opinion. If you enjoy it, great. If you don't enjoy it,
there's another bottle.
There's
always another bottle.
That's something else. But so this wine, New Zealand's particularly famous for white wines, particularly famous for Sauvignon Blanc. If you ever do a blind tasting kind of test or something like that, and you get a mull for Sauvignon Blanc, you'd be like, okay, sweet, got that one. You don't even need to taste it. It's probably the most easy to recognise wine. So everybody outside of New Zealand thinks that's all we drink. What we actually in New Zealand, the most popular wine at the moment, or at least when I left a couple of years ago, is Pinot Gris. And so this is Pinot Gris. Have you tasted it yet?
Like my second.
It's got a nice little swirl.
This is your favorite type of.
I love Pinot Gris, and Pinot Grigio is my favorite wine. I go nuts when I see it, and I saw the bottle, and I was like, yes, I really love the first one.
Why is that too much?
You know what? It's got this crispness that I really enjoy. It's a flirty drink. Like I can have fun with it. It's not like everybody drinks Chardonnay, and so it's a very easy drink. Like I could drink that while I'm editing or working. But Pinot Gris is something like, it's your night out, it's a fun day. It's special. Yeah, it's my special.
Now, of course, little joke at the beginning, but yeah, I know absolutely nothing about wine. I think it would help, with my life, and people say, so what's a good wine to go with that? My house wine.
But how I discovered I love Pinot Grigio was I went to Australia, and it was literally 10 days on the Gold Coast, and there was this bottle down the street, and I swear, maybe like every day we went and we got a new bottle of wine, and the guy helped us out so much. He would say like, "What do you like? What do you do? What do you this?" And he would give us the wine that he thought we would like, and we just had a list of wines we liked and the wines we could pass on, and that's how I discovered I love Pinot Grigio.
And usually the ones that I pass on are Chardonnay, and you mentioned. And it's like, everybody drinks Chardonnay. I was like, I do not. But the first time I was here, you gave me an amazing tasting. I think we're going to be tasting some Chardonnay later to debunk some of the myths I had.
If I'm involved, you're probably going to
That's fine. I will take it. I am open.
It's just me in my head, but so I just, in particular, just took 3 sips. Of course, I didn't spit out or anything like that. But I'm really. It seemed like on the second one, it tastes different from the first one, and I'm just wondering if it's just in my head or is it really I'm tasting it better. You told us to, but I never paid attention before.
Honestly, psychology of it is actually pretty relevant as well. There was a sake that I used to sell when I was working in Auckland, in Sydney, and it would be made with the yeast of wild strawberry flowers. And customers would say, "Oh, you can taste strawberry," and I'm pretty sure you can't. Because it's from the yeast of wild. I never said that. You don't want to embarrass anybody.
Sure.
But nobody ever said before I told them yeast of strawberry flowers. Nobody ever said strawberries. There was another sake I used to sell where I said that the lady who makes it loves sherry, and the customer said, "Oh, I can really taste the cherries." Like, okay, that's cool. But I mean, so there is the psychology is kind of critical.
Yeah.
If you taste the wine with your friends and you have a good time, it's almost guaranteed to taste better than when you buy a case of it and drink it at home.
Yes.
Like, it's almost guaranteed to, because if you like the staff member, if you like your people that you're with, you're gonna like the wine. And that's kind of true for everything.
No, I'm just saying that definitely my second sip it tastes different to me, and it just tastes better than the first one. And I don't know. I enjoyed it. I like it.
We have to know it a little bit.
Yeah. Great company.
So what should we be tasting in this one? What are some of the, there are notes, right, and things, so what are the things that we should be?
So Pinot Grigio, it's the same grade. Pinot Gris if you see Pinot Gris on the label from somewhere from New Zealand or Australia, they're implying it's more of a French style. If you see Grigio, they're implying it's more of an Italian style. But it blurs, and it kind of also just depends on what they felt like putting on the label. There's no hard and fast rule on it, but a Pinot Gris will tend to be more apples and pears. Pinot Grigio will probably have a higher acidity and maybe a little bit more citrus. And if you think about the type of food where Pinot Grigio comes from, it's Italian food. There's a lot of diversity across there. You tend to think more olive oils and cheeses and things. Where this comes from Alsace, the Pinot Gris style, and the food is a little bit heavier maybe, but not in a cheesy kind of way. So the acidity maybe isn't quite so relevant. And the thing also when you talk about the descriptors of wine, if you taste, there'll be things that you taste because of your, for want of a better word, flavor library, that I don't really know what. If I mention Fijoas, for example, you're probably going to go, you didn't know what. It's like, and you grow up in New Zealand and you just assume everybody knows what a Fijo is. And Tamarillo is another thing. There's a whole lot of fruits that I grew up with that you probably haven't tasted. And my wife, being Japanese, she would smell wine and she's like, "Oh, that smells like canned tuna." And it's a good thing for her because the canned tuna is a positive memory. So, but if you say that to the average New Zealander, if you say it to a winemaker, they're like, "That's bad." And so, but my Italian friend, he was always talking about spices that I don't know because that's what he was just talking about. So, when you taste this, what you're kind of looking for is more like a repeatability. So, if you taste taste raspberries today and you don't taste raspberries tomorrow, maybe you didn't taste raspberries the first day. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, if someone, there are also things like, my friends always like, oh, I smell black pepper in certain red wines. I never smell black pepper. It's because of the way that I was born. Literally, there's like about 30% of people, I think, don't smell black pepper on wine.
Really?
Yeah, so like if you smell it, I'll be like, oh, shut up. I'm sick of hearing this. So there are things like that that I will never smell, no matter how strongly you say it. So that's one of the things people are afraid to talk about wine sometimes. But really, the words that came about from talking about wine, the objective words to try and explain the subjective feeling.
Okay.
So you can use whatever words you use, and cool. If anyone kind of gives you a little bit of grief, it's probably because they lack the confidence.
There we go.
That's a nice way to put it.
No wrong answers, no wrong smells, no wrong tastes.
There was one time when I was getting sake, I was smelling some sake in Chicago of all places, doing a course, and I was thinking, wow, it's a lot of chocolate fruit, it's coconut, it's pineapple, wow, and then I might have told you this today. Yeah, and then the second one was the same thing, it was like, hand soap. So that is when I'm like, they use a really fragrant hand soap in the bathroom. So if you're smelling those sorts of things, it might not be the drink.
Your environment.
Maybe a little bit perfume next time. I can't smell anything so but yeah, so I mean, when you what a lot of people will get with Pinot Gris is the texture is a little bit oily, like it's quite full bodied sometimes, so it feels in your mouth. Apples, like I said before, pears, and maybe ginger, like gingerbread, not gingerbread. And one of my friends also used to describe it afterwards. He said it's almost like stale beer, and that is not a good smell for me, but it is something that you might smell.
Okay. And so, me being a chef, I want to know which cheese would you recommend to go with this wine?
With this one specifically, I think probably the blue,
Okay.
but honestly, it's just I'm more of a get in there and taste it. There are some people in Alsace that feel that Pinot Gris is the only wine that you can drink from start to finish.
Okay.
That's not necessarily true, but they feel that way. But yeah, this will match with a lot of things. It's one of, and it'll even match with just watching rugby, which is probably one of the reasons why.
I really love your rugby. Dare I ask your favorite team on camera? All right, I am going to
Try with the blue. Okay. And it's important to note that this is New Zealand wine bar. So all of the wine that you serve here is from New Zealand.
Almost.
Okay. So what are some of the exceptions?
I'm also an Australian citizen, so like Australian wine, I feel there's a lot that's not understood about Australian wine as well. But it's the Australian climatic conditions. There's a certain style of wine that I love, which is an Australian Shiraz, and we can't do that in New Zealand because the temperature doesn't, thankfully, hit those sorts of highs. But and there's a couple of other random things that I've kind of picked up over the years that I think is just kind of cool. But mostly, I think it's probably about 95%, 98% of the wine is made by in New Zealand, and probably 85% of it is made by people who I consider friends. The idea was to try and introduce people to things made by people who you know. It's easy to be passionate.
Yes, I love it.
And kind of like I said, like things taste better if it's done by someone who if you meet the chef, the food probably tastes better. All those sorts of things. It's about trying to get people to appreciate where these things come from.
Well, I love the blue. The blue is very delicious.
And it complements.
And it does.
Very, very well.
So, very good recommendation.
Should we move on to the next one?
Yes, please.
Try. You're like savoring over here.
I'm a savior. I love savory flavors. This will be on a low burn for like the next 5 minutes.
We move on. Why?
Wine. Okay, here it is.
I'm going to
We're
We're
ready.
gonna move on.
We'll pour on this side first.
Yeah, exactly.
She don't want to leave her favorite.
You mentioned that you said Pinot Gris is a wine that some people feel like you can drink from start to finish. What does that mean when you say start to finish?
Well, with kind of anything, your palate changes, and usually, like if you're doing a meal, maybe you start off with something that's quite light and elegant to begin with. If you start off with something that's big and oily and heavy, and then move on to sashimi, you're not going to taste the sashimi. So that's because your palate will tend to get jaded as you progress. There are certain things you can drink in the morning that you can't, and certain things that you shouldn't drink in the morning. I remember talking to a whiskey maker from Tasmania, and he said, this one I really like. This one is like breakfast whiskey. And he said, I understand the concept. So, yeah.
Sharing a little bit more about yourself.
And I think that's the thing, like, because in the morning there's certain things you can handle that you can't handle, that you can't handle in the morning, you can handle in the evening. It's the same concept. And so the Pinot Gris, what they're saying is that they feel it will be relevant all the way through the meal. So the wine that we just had was from Marlborough. It was from a winery called Nobody's Hero. Actually, the winery's called Framing, and Nobody's Hero was one of the brands. Marlborough is in the top of the South Island, the most famous region in New Zealand. It's probably 70-something% of the production comes from New Zealand. I think 83% of the exports, something like that. And really, really, really famous for Sauvignon Blanc, like I said before. This one is a Lawson's Dry Hills Rosé. And Rosé is, if Pinot Gris isn't the most popular wine in New Zealand, Rosé probably is. And I would say probably 6 years ago, it wasn't very popular. Supermarket, you'd have like 5 bottles on the shelf. And then 1 year later, you'd have multiple shelves of rosé. And I don't really know why that happened, but I suspect it's because the winemakers decided to make good rosé. Everybody thinks that it's going to be sort of sweet and candy water a little bit. It's almost like the sort of thing you drink if you were 17 or 18.
Yeah.
And
the basic.
yeah,
Not a lot of men tend to respond well to rosé, at least when they see it on the menu.
Yeah. And that's again the lack of confidence, I think, in their own. I'm not sure where's that sentence heading. Dry rosé, and that's the main difference as well. They started making good dry rosé, and dry rosé I honestly think is the best match with Japanese food. It is one of the best food matches. I think this is probably to match with the cheddar. Is probably the best, but a dry rosé is really, really famous around the southern Mediterranean and France, and amazing wines. Also, because they're not so popular with a respect point of view, they're also pretty well priced. It's not easy to find a very expensive bottle of rosé. But yeah, so this one, Lawson's, again, these guys are good friends. This is, okay?
This is so funny. We're going back to our previous conversation. So we were talking about things that come to you. I got bad skills.
This is dry rosé, but it smells sweet.
You said it was dry, and I'm looking at the bottle, and it says Lawson's, no connection to Coleman. Dry Hills.
We are in Japan.
But I swear my nose got Skittles.
This is a perfect example. I don't know what you're talking about. When I grew up, we didn't have Skittles in New Zealand. We might now, but I don't. I kind of have a concept of some sort of candy that's covered like hard candy.
Yeah, you got it.
I don't think I've ever had it. If you said M&M's, I'd be like,
no.
I've had M&M's, but I'm not sure about that. But that's cool. But Skittles doesn't mean anything to me.
Sweet juiciness, maybe.
Yeah, and you also said it smells sweet, which is actually kind of a misunderstanding of what sweet is. Sweet is a taste. Yeah. And so things. It doesn't really smell sweet. It smells like something that you remember as being sweet, if that makes sense.
It does.
And yeah, because you've kind of got 5 primary tastes, which are different from flavors, and those are the things you get from your mouth, and sweetness is one of them. When you smell something and it smells like it's sweet, it's more like it's reminded you of something that's sweet. Because this is a dry rosé. There's probably a little bit of sugar, but underneath there's then this is, I find it's really refreshing.
It's really cool.
And again, because it's a rosé, a lot of rosés don't get much. There's not much premium built into them because of the market.
And it's quite interesting. I usually don't buy rosé because I'm with my husband when I drink wine. So I'm thinking about most men don't drink pinkish or color drinks. So it was. So we just never buy. Well, this is really delicious.
It's not sweet.
It's not
sweet.
It's
Not
not
sweet.
The taste is not sweet.
Do you need some?
Yeah, as usual.
I had a question because you were talking about the library of flavors, and we've just kind of transitioned. We've had a couple of cheeses, and we started with the Pinot Gris. But how do you successfully transition from one flavor to another? Because I'm imagining my Skittles nose and dry taste kind of had something to do with the changes of flavor.
I might not have understood the question.
Okay.
When you're transitioning from one wine to another?
Kind of something like that. Well, you're transitioning from one wine to another because you were saying how the first sip of a wine is not accurate, so you have to do it 2 or 3 times to get it to be accurate. So I imagine that challenge is double that once you've changed from one wine to another and you've had some kind of food with that wine
During the same meal.
It's more, I guess, what I mean to say, like if you're doing a tasting with no food, then that's kind of what you need to do. If you're doing like tasting notes and things like that. If you are just shifting from one wine to another, I think that's kind of where the fun is. Because by that stage, hopefully your mindset has changed and you're more just about enjoying the wine and the food and the conversation. And if one of the things that I like about wine, probably more so than other beverages, is that it will constantly change. So part of the fun is you have a little bit of blue cheese and then you have a little bit of the brie and you just kind of see how enjoy the journey. But also with quite a few wines as well, especially some of the big older reds, the bottle changes as you drink it. So it won't taste the same. It won't even be close when you taste it at the beginning and then after like an hour. It's the sort of you wouldn't be able to say the same thing about most other beverages, but the change would be pretty huge. And and that's one of the things that makes it quite fascinating. So it is kind of changing, but if you're in the right mindset or in a mindset to enjoy it, just enjoy the journey. It sounds really cheesy, right?
No, it doesn't.
But like no stress. No stress when you're drinking.
Definitely. And also if you sort of stop and you think, oh, what am I getting now? And remember it. Because the other thing is I remember a master sommelier talking about the wine descriptors. Like, if you taste apple, the next question is it red apple or white apple? So green apple. Then you taste, say green apple. So, is it fresh green apple? Or is it cooked green apple? Is it bruised green apple? And they will break it down to that point. And they do it so often that they can just bust it up really quickly.
That sounds tiring to you.
Yeah, because what they're doing is building up a memory or like that's kind of stuck in your head. And the master sommelier said something like, I don't have a better tasting ability than you, I just have a better vocabulary. And that's how they've trained themselves because a master somm is not an easy thing to do. But that's one of the ways that they've trained themselves to be able to break down a wine and kind of go, oh yeah, my Sauvignon Blanc 1990, whatever. They can do those sorts of things by using that memory that they've created. But you can do that with anything. Like when you taste the cheese, you go, oh, it tastes nice. And then if someone asks you what it tastes like, then you have to start. And that becomes easier over time. So at the moment, it might taste like Skittles.
Yeah.
And then maybe, and who knows, in 2 years' time, you're like, wow, it tastes like Skittles. Or maybe you'll be thinking, I don't know why I used to think that. But it's, I think hopefully that answers
That really answered. I love that answer because, I never really thought about the prestige of sommelier because they are trying to build a database, if you will, and try to, when they have a wine at a certain point in time, they're trying to go through that database and, find the characteristics and then tell the person they're, having the wine with what that characteristic is. So, it sounds like a tough job.
And you are good at you're certified. I was like, you have amazing qualifications and you kind of traveled the world a little bit. So tell us about your background in wine.
So I said before my hands hurt, I used to be a database developer, reporting analyst, and originally I was fairly good at it, but then my hands stopped hurting, so I stopped working properly, so I hurt too much to use computers. And then I basically, living in Australia, started working in a hospitality place because I thought maybe that's something I could do, which might use computers. And my knowledge of wine was kind of like this. Someone would come up to the bar and say, "Can I have a dry white wine?" And I would just shut it. And then the customer would say, "Oh, sounds good." And then 2 or 3 minutes later, someone would come up and say, "Can I have a sweet white wine?" And I go, "Shut it." Because I didn't know. And my thought process was, if they knew, they'd tell me. So, and I was in a dodgy bar that was famous for violence.
Wine was not often ordered.
It's like, why are you here? And then I went off and started making cocktails, and I did met some really, really interesting people. Went to Guatemala, of all places, with a rum company. And it was more fun than being a database developer. And then I came to Japan and went back to work in a restaurant in Sydney called Sake. But I never drank sake when I was in Japan because it was just not very nice. And then I had a good one and realized I just had bad sake when I was in Japan. And it was the same thing that happened with me with Chardonnay. I only ever had bad Chardonnay when I was young, so I didn't drink Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Then I had a good one and realized I'd wasted 15 years of my life not drinking Chardonnay. And then I started to, when I went back to New Zealand, then it was the perfect opportunity to really study wine. And it's a small country, the winemakers, when you work in a good restaurant, there's once a week is at least a winemaker coming through. It's and I basically just saw someone wearing it. These guys, they had Lawson's Grey Hills written on their shirt, so I said, "You should drink sake because wine's rubbish with food." Just to get a reaction.
Some people are very boy.
But I think if you get to meet these guys, you'll understand that they're pretty funny. They're pretty funny people. But all of the winemakers, they're all just really nice people. And they you see them sometimes sit back and you see it and they'll start laughing. But they're just really nice people. I wanted to learn more about what they do and why they do it. And then, it's a fascinating privilege.
And then you went down the rabbit hole, and now you open your own restaurant.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm very glad to be here. I actually will say I've been drinking wine for a minute, but this is probably the first time I'm actually enjoying wine.
Oh.
Yeah. So I can say that.
Tim will be happy.
Yeah. So thank you.
Enjoying the wine.
Did you try it with the cheddar?
Yeah, I
think the best match would be
just
cheddar.
did.
And that was the first time I actually had a rosé that I respected. Was I had a French from Provence rosé with some cheddar, and kind of went. I always thought that red wine was supposed to be better with cheese, but it's in my personal preference. It's not. Like my personal preference would be rosé and white wine, and that match was just phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm enjoying.
So it makes
Take that.
yeah, take your time.
Tortoise.
She needs a second glass.
Did you keep up?
Yeah.
That's literally what I was thinking.
You know that you say that, but the last time I was here,
That's exactly what
that's
happened.
exactly what happened. I had 2 glasses because I couldn't keep up, yo.
Hey, but then we were jealous of you because you had two and you were empty. So it all works out. Exactly. So I know that there's a myth. Some people don't know about rosé, right? That it's not like red and white together. It's all kind of the same grape, right? But then they keep the skin on for the fermentation process or something to get the pinkness, and then they take it out before it turns like to red wine. Is that how rosé is
I
made?
guess there's 2 kind of main ways of making rosé, and there's actually a misunderstanding. It's like red wine comes from red grapes, right? And white wine comes from white grapes. Except champagne is quite often Pinot Noir. So the red wine, if you cut a grape open, the other side of almost all of them, there's a couple of exceptions, is white. So the red wine, the color comes from the skin. So you can make white wine from red grapes, you just don't leave any contact with the skin. So when you're making a rosé, sometimes they'll have contact, like this is Pinot Noir rosé. So sometimes they'll have contact for a short period of time, and then they'll take the skin away. Or sometimes what they're doing is they're actually making red wine, and then they'll drain off some of the juice when it's this color, and then they'll leave it there. And what that means is there's more skin to juice ratio for that, so it's going to be a red wine. So this is sort of two most ways to make it. I can almost guarantee someone out there is just like blending bottles.
Orange wine is?
No, orange wine.
Yeah.
Orange wine is actually a white wine that's been made with skin contact. So, so normally when you make a white wine, you just squeeze the juice and then the skin goes away. If you use orange wine, is quite often a wine that they've kept the skin in contact with the juice when they're making the wine, and what that'll mean is there's a certain amount of tannin that stays in there, like the grippiness that you get from the skin and also from the stalk sometimes. So that's kind of orange wine. Natural wine is something a little bit different, but there's a whole lot of things
We
going
need
on.
2 more glasses
Yes,
to
it is.
discuss that. So.
All right, we're ready.
That was the first more time, yeah.
By the time he comes back,
Okay, so these wines are kind of a little bit to make a bit of a point, because, like I said, personal preference is the only thing that's important. But starting off with this one here, this one's called, this is the Riesling, and the reason why I wanted you to taste the Riesling is there are a lot of people in the world that don't drink Riesling because they don't like sweet wine. So the answer is always have a dry one. Like Riesling goes from super sweet, like crazy sweet dessert wine, all the way to bone dry. And this one is more towards the bone dry. And being 11 years old, it's from 2009. You can't see the color. White wine gets brown when it gets older or golden. Red wine also gets brown. So whenever you see something of that color, it suggests that it might be an old wine. And the other cool thing that I absolutely love about, and this is one of those strange flavor descriptive things, when I smell an aged Riesling, it often smells like inner tube.
I have the same feeling.
Inner tube.
Yes.
And that makes me think of when I was about 9 years old and I was fixing my BMX underneath an apple tree in the rain. It's a very specific memory. It is very, very pleasant.
I have the same thing, but for me it was my dad changing the car tire.
Yeah. And this is one of the things. Not reason, but wine can, like so many of your memories are associated to smell, and wine is so complex that it's possible for it to do things like that. So there's probably some wines that trigger like traumatic experiences, so maybe stay away from them. But this is it's a very badly respected variety around the world, which again means that some of the best wines that you can get for cost performance will be Riesling. Yeah, and this for example, to be able to sell an 11-year-old wine by the glass in Japan is pretty crazy, because I feel sure you can't get that in New Zealand. But if you can, it won't be as cheap as it is in Japan. But Riesling also for me, lime, citrus, those are the sorts of things. You might get a certain amount of honey as well. This is a grape that's often used for dessert wines. But yeah, for me it's just, I love this wine. And being super, super dry, I'm going to say it's going to work really well with your pate. Any of that dry fruit.
I love my steak. I'm from Mississippi, but beyond like red, white, or Chardonnay, we don't know much about this one at all. So at least I don't. So this is quite nice for me.
It's such a, I mean, the wine, half the reason why I love wine so much is because of the history. Like, I know more about American history from studying wine than I did before. Like things like the Missoula floods, which had a direct impact on the way that wine is going around along the Colorado River. That's right, really. I haven't studied from Mexico for a while. But, and the Missoula floods, are you familiar with those? Like, I think it's like 15,000 years ago minimum, but maybe longer. And it's just like these insane floods that used to happen in the North American continent. There's a reason why the French grapes got to a certain point in France before they got pushed back, and it pretty much coincides with where the Romans got pushed back by the Germanic tribes. describes. Like there's so many fascinating things when you start studying it, and then you kind of, even if you're not interested in that, it tastes good.
I love it.
Bottom line, tastes good. My husband's German, and Riesling is very well known in Germany, so it has a special place in my heart. But I prefer the dry. Rieslings.
Yeah. German Riesling is something that people are kind of like, oh, I don't like German Riesling, and you're like, that's a really big statement because I guarantee you do like German Riesling.
Yeah.
Like if you like nice things, I guarantee there's something there.
Yeah, but now I just wonder that now that I've had to try first, because this is my first time drinking this.
Yeah.
So will I be able to drink the sweet? Will it be as?
The only thing I think is relevant, and I think this is probably maybe the most important word in the English language is balance. And if there's a balance between the sweetness and the acidity, if you think of like a simple cocktail like a daiquiri or mojito, like the sweet, if it's too sweet, it's too sweet. And if it's too dry, it's like sour.
Yeah.
Bitter, sour. It's too sour. But if you get that balance, you can drink that for a long time.
This is nice. I really like this.
And I suspect, with the agave in particular, it'll start drifting towards a cocktail, like luscious cocktail.
I've already tried that.
You got that luscious cocktail feel?
Yes, I did. And it was, yes.
Those are rich mix.
Yes.
Riesling is just, it's a phenomenal grape that people will fall in love with again. And that's a nice little transfer into this one, because the reason why so many people don't drink Riesling is because at one stage there was a lot of really bad Riesling on the market. And same with Chardonnay. There's an ABC crowd in Australia and New Zealand, and probably in countries which is basically anything but Chardonnay. And that's because same thing that I had.
Because that wasn't until you introduced me to the Chardonnay. So thank you. I'm no longer part of the ABC.
I guarantee if you don't like Sauvignon Blanc, there'll be one you like. It's like that's how diverse it is, and maybe you won't find it on your first trip, but there will be something that you like. And so the Chardonnay, no one was ever drinking Chardonnay in Australia, New Zealand. There's a beautiful Australasian word, bogan, that you're gonna have to Google. But Chardonnay for a lot of people was a bogan drink.
Really?
Yeah.
Bogan's like a ratchet person, like a real urban person. Like they're the person that's wearing white socks with the flip flops, and they're wearing a tank top. You know,
Is that true?
The tank top will be black and will have either Metallica or Ice.
You know, are we stereotyping?
It's just such a. It's something with Googling. It's a different rabbit hole.
Let Google tell you.
we're going down the people of Walmart territory. Let's just call it.
Okay. First of all, let's just state it out here. There's nothing wrong with shopping at Walmart.
There's nothing wrong with shopping at Walmart.
And there's nothing wrong with bogans.
And there's nothing exactly.
I have been accused of being a bogan many times in my class. But it usually comes from Western Auckland or Western Sydney.
Okay.
Or Hamilton.
Yes.
That's
I'm a Walmart girl.
Right.
I can't deny my roots. Walmart.
So the same thing happened with Chardonnay, like I said, it kind of happened with Riesling. And when I first tasted it, real Chardonnay, you're like, oh no, why wasn't I? What had I done? And so this is two different Chardonnays, and the reason I want you to taste these is because they're both really, really good wines, but one of them is a bit more, well, it's quite a lot more expensive than the other. And it'd be just interesting to see which one you like.
Here we go. And can we tell you what we taste, and you try not to pull faces about ridiculousness?
Oh yeah, I can try.
You can try, exactly. That's all we ask.
Alright. So this one was darker. So I'm already gonna say this one's more expensive.
It's age.
Okay.
I'm gonna do this food library thing is so funny. I've got corn in this one.
Yeah. My Japanese staff were like, oh, this smells like rice crackers. I'm like, I don't know what you mean, and then I had enough rice crackers, and then you're like, oh yeah, I get that.
The French Chardonnay is like a
This is really dry.
perfume almost. It smells a little bit like a unisex cologne.
A unisex cologne.
I actually want to give the 3 sips in a sense before I move on to the other one. want to make sure I can.
Yeah, you're right. This is like Abercrombie and Fish.
That's the second one though.
This is the unisex.
Okay, unisex one. So,
But like unisex and Abercrombie.
okay, I've never heard this before. It's a thing. I would also say that the first Chardonnay, I'm getting more
Slowly.
butter. Right? I'm getting the butter that Chardonnay is usually known for, maybe. But then when I taste it, it's not hitting me the way that some other.
The butter comes from oak.
Okay.
And so if they use a lot of oak and they don't control it and they just use it as a way of hiding bad grapes,
Right.
then whereas you have a wine like Chablis where usually it's a Chardonnay, Chablis is a Chardonnay, but usually there's no oak. Some of the more expensive stuff, and it's usually old oak, so there's not so much influence.
Exclusive. But it's like rich, not buttery. Like
I'm getting that.
You're getting a little bit of that. You're getting a little bit of that.
The richness.
I would say this is probably the butteriness
Okay.
of the wines that we have here. Except one of the, I've got a couple from Australia that would be probably more buttery or
What is that over there? You're very pensive.
I'm just trying to determine which one I like better.
Okay.
That's
important.
that's the only thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and
More than anything else because. I almost feel like the first one.
first one there,
I'm curious.
the darker of the two.
The second one is really good for me. However, I don't know if it was just stronger or I'm not sure. I don't know. Drinking it after this one was kind of.
That answer is correct.
Always correct.
It's honestly, it's the only thing that's important is if you like it. And are you guys ready to find out which one is the more expensive?
Yeah.
That was the first one.
That was the first one. The oaky one.
I don't know. I mean, just devil's advocate. I'll say the second one. I feel the second one's a little bit. It feels, and also maybe more balanced. And I also got a little bit of like an oiliness at the beginning before I swallowed. So
I just know I like the flavor of the second one better.
The flavor of the second one?
Yes. This one seemed a little bit stronger to me.
So
I don't know.
preference, second one, preference?
Preference first one for me.
Preference, first one.
First one.
Second.
This one.
The first one was your
Yes,
preference?
that was-
Okay, so congratulations because that's the cheapest one. Honestly, it's
You should pick Abercrombie.
So the first one was the one that was the unisex smell to me.
Oh,
so
really?
the second one that's more expensive, I didn't get that.
Okay, I must have had the oak one first.
the darker one is the cheap.
Yeah.
The darker one is the cheap one.
And that's the one that I got the unisex smell from too.
But I think I told you last time I saw that winemaker, he was complaining to me why his wine was so cheap. He's like, Wayne, why is my Chardonnay so cheap? And I said, put the price up, Tim. And he said, no, it's not about that. Why is it so cheap? I'm like, I don't know.
Now I can't
Like
tell you.
I said, he's a very funny guy.
It was interesting. I was thinking the stronger one might have been the more developed one, which would have been the more expensive one. I just preferred the cheaper one.
and there's a reason for price. As we said before, a lot of it's what people think they should pay. Some of the price, the difference between a Louis Vuitton handbag and a handbag made by a craftsman in some countries, the craftsman handbag will be better, but the Louis Vuitton one will be $20,000. Like the brand recognition, and that's not to say that Louis Vuitton handbag isn't good, but there is a separation from what it costs to make to where it is now. And wine, the second wine, for example, they did a blind tasting of 100 Chardonnay from around the world and 100 Chardonnay from Burgundy. That company's Chardonnay in the blind tasting, and this was a whole other Chardonnay, real Chardonnay people, their company came third in the world. And the difference between that wine that came third and the one that you just tasted, sometimes I prefer the one you just tasted. Maybe in 10 years it'll be different, but And the other thing about that is the wine that came first was 25 times more expensive than the one that came third, and they were all decent good wines. So like the prices, there's a reason, but it's also not often relevant. And if you prefer the cheapest one, sweet. It's
Just
what
go
it's-
in the good.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
It's also a status thing. I mean, you're someone who's buying the most expensive wine. So I was reading a book by a guy named Richard Cialdini called Influence, and he did an example of the wine menu where you've got 3 wines. You've got a cheapest chips wine, and you've got a medium wine, and then you've got this ridiculously expensive wine that you will never ever buy. So his point was that you are influenced to get the middle wine because you don't want to go cheap. You just want to stay in the middle where it's safe and reasonably priced. So I don't know. There's some mental jujitsu happening in terms of pricing in that regard as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the only thing that's probably got more falsehood built into its pricing structure is fashion. And I remember something, I think it was in Hollywood, where they had Payless shoes did a pop-up brand, and they invented a shoemaker called Polisi or something like that. and all of these people were like saying, "Oh yeah, I've been following him for ages. He's one of my favorite designers." And they were paying hundreds of dollars for these shoes that were. It's a perfect example.
I love it.
It's
Still, I love the story.
Oh goodness.
Wow, this has been awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
So okay, before we wrap up, so we've tasted what 5 different wines today. Feel very special. Very
Yes.
blessed to have done this.
Yes.
This is the best Monday I've ever had.
I know. This is a great start.
This is a great start to me.
Thank you.
It's not morning, but it is Monday.
So before we wrap up, we wanted to ask you, our wine expert, if there are any myths or misconceptions. We've gone through a whole slew of things today, but any that we didn't cover that like just rankle you, just make you mad that people don't know or don't understand. Besides the fact that like wine should just be enjoyed, and wine is best enjoyed with people that you love being around. When it comes to pricing, when it comes to drinking, when it comes to choosing, are there any things that you would like to impart to our audience?
I think probably the main thing is that wine is not, it's not that complicated, it is big. So it can look complicated from the outside, but once you start, it's just like, oh, I like that, and it grows.
Yeah.
But wine is not complicated in my mind. But the other thing I think that's important is that it shouldn't be snobby either.
Yeah.
You meet the winemakers, and they're farmers. Like they're literally in the dirt. You know, they're out there. They're quite often really, really shy. They're definitely not arrogant or snobby. They all just want you to understand why they do what they do. They're like artists.
Yeah.
And so, like, the snobbery doesn't come from the winemakers. The snobbery comes from somewhere in between. And so, don't let that stop you from enjoying it. Like, don't let that stop. Don't let the arrogant sommelier or arrogant friend or something like that stop you from enjoying it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Could you tell me, why did you start this place? Why did you?
Most of the wine here is made by friends. Most people in Japan who like wine don't realize that they should be drinking New Zealand wine. So we make
They should be drinking. And I can definitely just say to our viewers, they are nice. Very, very nice. Yes.
Not serious wrong today. Definitely not.
thank you. They will all be happy to hear that. It's a small community in New Zealand, so it's very, very tight knit. And it's one of our biggest exports now. But we're a small country, so it's.
Well, we're grateful for them for sharing their gifts with Japan and for you for bringing them here.
Thank you.
So
My
this
pleasure.
has been great.
And you're also a sake bar, so you have how many sakes here to try from all over Japan? Tell us a little bit about that.
The menu is kind of reducing a little bit because what I'm trying to find is special sake that you don't get everywhere. So things that are maybe limited edition or something. I've got some sake made in New Zealand by a New Zealand brewer. It's called Zenkur.
Oh yeah.
All black sake. If you know anything about New Zealand rugby, that might ring a bell. It's just a coincidence, apparently. So the all black sake, we've got most of his range here. Some of the breweries that I've worked in, we've got some of their stuff, and we we've just got some cool stuff, which is actually a collaboration between a brewery in Ayanna and Chivas Regal. So it's whiskey barrel aged. It's like something new and interesting. That's kind of what we want to concentrate on.
Okay, fantastic.
So we gotta correct this.
Oh yeah, no, we're coming back.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
we're doing
A second edition.
Thank you so much.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for watching us today with LaTonya and Tia here, and fantastic Wayne and Rangitoto Tokyo. We are so happy to have been able to do this tasting and share our experiences with you. We are going to be trying to do this programming every other month, so make sure you watch on our Facebook channel, Legacy Foundation Japan, for more to come. And if you have any comments or questions, please don't be shy. We would love to hear from you.